My name is Madison Cole. I'm 31 years old, and the night my boyfriend joked that he had a secret life I didn't know about, he turned our relationship into evidence. He didn't know that yet, of course. To him, it was just another story he performed for an audience. We were at his apartment, technically his, but I may as well have been paying rent to the furniture. We'd been together 3 years. We didn't officially live together, but I stayed over most nights. I had my own drawer, left half my skincare there, kept work clothes in his closet. I paid for half the groceries without being asked, because that's what you do when you think you're building something together. He was 29, funny, charming, the kind of guy who could make a cashier feel like the most interesting person in the room. That charisma was part of what drew me in. That night, he was in the kitchen with two of his college friends. Wine bottles were open, glasses refilling themselves, their laughter getting louder and looser with every pour. I was in the living room with the TV on, pretending to watch, but really just existing in their space like I always did, present but peripheral. The apartment smelled like red wine, garlic, and that particular mix of cologne and laundry detergent that had started to feel like home to me. I was half listening, half scrolling my phone when I heard him say it. "Oh my God, you guys have no idea. I literally have this entire secret life she doesn't know about." The words cut through the laughter like a dropped glass. I froze. His friends burst out laughing. One of them said something I couldn't catch over the noise, and then he kept going. "No, seriously, like every Tuesday I tell her I've got book club. She totally buys it. Meanwhile, I'm—" More laughter swallowed the rest. "Book club? Every Tuesday?" My brain flipped through Tuesdays like a Rolodex. Him heading out with a tote bag and a hardcover that never seemed to move past chapter 3. Late returns home smelling like wine. Him complaining about some boring host, rambling about whatever pretentious novel they'd allegedly discussed. I remembered asking follow-up questions about the books, thinking I was being a supportive girlfriend. I remembered recommending one once, and him brushing it off with, "We've got a list already, babe." The living room blurred. I muted the TV. For a second, I tried to convince myself I'd misheard. Secret life. Book club. Maybe it was just drunk exaggeration, the way people dramatize their routines to sound more interesting. But my stomach had already dropped, and that animal part of my brain that catalogs danger whispered, "This is specific." I stood up and walked into the kitchen. They all looked up at me at once, my boyfriend leaning against the counter, wine glass in hand, his two friends perched on bar stools. "Hey, babe," he said, smiling like nothing had happened. "You good?" "Yeah," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Actually, tell me more about that secret life." The room went quiet so fast it felt like someone had hit a mute button. His friends suddenly needed to look at their phones. One took a long drink of wine just to have something to do. "What?" My boyfriend laughed, but it had a paper-thin edge. I was kidding around. "It didn't sound like kidding," I said. "It sounded specific. Book club on Tuesdays, right?" His smile flickered. "Oh my God, Maddie, stop being paranoid. It's just guy talk." "So," I said calmly, "tell me what you're really doing." "I just told you, book club." His face was getting red, his jaw tightening. "Why are you being weird right now?" His friends shifted in their seats like they were watching a live show they hadn't bought tickets for. I looked at them and then back at him. "You're the one who announced you have a whole life I don't know about." "It was a joke," he snapped. "God, you're so insecure sometimes. This is exactly why I need space." There it was, the flip. His carelessness turned into my flaw in under 30 seconds. One of his friends mumbled something about an early morning. The other suddenly remembered he had to be somewhere. They gathered their things with awkward smiles. Muttering good nights, they aimed in my general direction. I didn't stop them. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and then his smile disappeared completely. "What was that?" he demanded. "You totally embarrassed me." "You announced you have a secret life," I said. "I asked about it. That's not embarrassing. That's basic curiosity." "I told you it was a joke. You're making a big deal out of nothing." "A joke?" I repeated. So if I stood in front of my friends and said, "I have this whole secret life my boyfriend doesn't know about. Every Thursday I tell him I'm at yoga," you'd think that was funny? "That's different," he said immediately. "How?" "Because I know you," he said. "You wouldn't do that." "And I thought I knew you," I said quietly. We fought for over an hour. He cycled through every argument in the book. It was just a joke. I was embarrassing him. I was paranoid. I was reading tone wrong. His friends were just hyping him up. I was ruining the vibe. At one point he said, "This is exactly why I don't tell you everything. You blow things out of proportion." That one stuck. I don't tell you everything, By the time we exhausted ourselves, nothing was resolved. He insisted it was just him trying to sound interesting in front of his friends. I wanted to believe him. I loved him. I had a future mapped out in my head, moving in officially, maybe engagement in a year or two. I went to sleep on the edge of his bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing, even out like none of it had rattled him. My brain didn't shut off. It kept replaying the way his friends had looked at each other, the speed at which they left, the way his laughter had sounded before he realized I was listening, looser, freer, like he was telling a story he'd told before. My heart said, he wouldn't do that to you. My gut said, get proof before you rearrange your life around a lie. In the morning, he acted like nothing had happened. He kissed my forehead, made a joke about me interrogating him, and left for work a little earlier than usual. I stood in his kitchen, looking at the empty wine glasses in the sink, and made a decision. If I was wrong, I'd owe him an apology. If I was right, I owed myself the truth. I called a friend from work who'd gone through a messy divorce a year earlier. She was the kind of person who had a contact for everything. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual and failing. I need a recommendation for a private investigator. There was a pause on the other end. Oh, she said slowly, that kind of recommendation. She texted me a number 10 minutes later. I sat at my own kitchen table with my laptop open and my coffee untouched, staring at the phone number like it was a detonator. Then I dialed. The man who answered sounded calm, almost bored, professional. Tell me what's going on, he said. My boyfriend goes to book club every Tuesday night, I said. He made a joke about having a secret life I don't know about. I need to know what he's actually doing. Okay, the PI said, no judgment in his voice. Give me a week. I'll get you answers. It cost me $1,500. I wired the deposit while my hands were still shaking. That Tuesday, I kissed my boyfriend goodbye at his door like I always did. He had his tote bag over his shoulder, a hardcover sticking out of the top that looked as pristine as the day he'd bought it. Don't wait up, he said lightly. You know how book club gets. Yeah, I said. Text me if it runs really late. He pecked my cheek and left. I waited an hour, pacing my living room, checking the clock every few minutes, my phone never leaving my hand. When it finally buzzed, it wasn't his name. It was the PI. A text with a photo attached. My breath caught. In the picture, my boyfriend was sitting at an upscale restaurant I recognized from Instagram. White tablecloths, low lighting, candles on each table. He wasn't surrounded by a group of readers arguing about plot points. He was at a table for two. Across from him sat a woman, her hair falling forward as she laughed, his hand covering hers on the table like they were in their own little bubble. They looked like the only people in the room. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. Another photo came through seconds later, different angle. This time he was leaning in closer, and she was touching his face, her fingertips grazing his jaw in a way that was not friendly, not vague, not anything you could reasonably call book club. The text under the photos was simple. Tonight's book club, more to follow. My vision tunneled. The living room went quiet. In that moment, the joke about a secret life stopped being hypothetical. I was looking at it. The PI didn't send anything else that night. My boyfriend came home a little after 10, exactly like he said he would. He smelled like wine and something rich and buttery I didn't recognize. A restaurant smell, not someone's living room. He kicked off his shoes, dropped his tote bag by the couch, and launched into a story about this ridiculous chapter debate they'd had, rolling his eyes at some guy named Mark, who allegedly wouldn't stop talking. I watched him, nodding in the right places, hearing the words but seeing the photo instead, his hand over another woman's, the way he'd leaned in toward her like she was the only person in the room. The book sticking out of his bag looked untouched. He didn't notice the way my fingers dug into my own arm, where my hand rested. I didn't ask questions, not that night. I just said, sounds exhausting, and let him fall asleep with his arm thrown over my waist like I was the familiar option he returned to after the more exciting parts of his life were done for the evening. The PI's updates started stacking up. Every time my phone buzzed with that unknown number, I braced myself and opened it anyway. Each message was another brick in the wall of reality I could no longer ignore. Photos, timestamps, location stamps, always Tuesday. Always the same restaurant. Always the same woman. She was pretty in a polished, intentional way. Glossy hair, manicured nails, tailored clothes. The kind of woman who knows exactly how she photographs in low lighting. In one picture, she was laughing with her head tilted back, his hand resting at the small of her back. In another, he was kissing her in the parking lot, her hand curled around the back of his neck, like it was a habit, not a one-time mistake. The PI added details too, because that was his job. They arrive separately. She gets there first. He joins within 10 minutes. Same corner table. He orders the wine. He pays every time. No sign of a group. At first, my brain wanted to compartmentalize. He's just confused. They're old friends. It's emotional cheating, not physical. Then I saw the photo of them pressed together by her car, his mouth against hers, her hand on his chest, and that line shattered. They weren't confused. They were comfortable. The report came at the end of the week in a neat PDF, like a school project on how to dismantle a relationship in 8 months. The PI had gone further than I'd expected. Turns out, when you pay for no judgment, just facts, you get more than you want. Subject has been meeting with the same woman weekly for approximately 8 months, the report read. Restaurant staff confirmed they are regulars, checked with sources, identified woman as subject's ex-girlfriend from college, Hannah Price, dated for 4 years. She relocated for work, recently moved back to the city 8 months ago. Right when book club began. What a coincidence. He told me she broke his heart years ago, I remembered saying to a friend once, but he's over it. Apparently, over it meant back at the same restaurant every Tuesday with her. The receipts were attached too. Photos of itemized bills, desserts, cocktails, expensive wine, entrees, with prices that made my eyes sting. $300 here, $250 there, $350 on a night they had a bottle of something with a name I couldn't pronounce. He never paid. Every single time, the card receipt showed her name. She was wining and dining him every Tuesday like he was some prize. Meanwhile, back in our non-secret life, I was covering our actual groceries, most of our dates, random trips, because he was tight on money right now. I remembered sitting on his couch with my laptop open and my banking app pulled up while he complained about how his paycheck didn't stretch the way it used to. I'd offered to cover more for a while. It's just a season, I'd told myself. We're a team. I looked at the total of those dinners over 8 months and felt my stomach turn. All those times he'd sighed and said, "Can we do something low-key? I'm kind of broke this week." And I'd smiled and said, "Of course." I didn't tell him I knew. Not yet. For the first time in a long time, I was grateful for my own stillness. I moved through the days like I was wrapped in cotton. He kissed my cheek and went to book club. I texted the PI and asked, "Are they there?" "Arrived 10 minutes ago," he replied the next Tuesday. Same table. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, my lipstick still in my hand, my heart pounding so hard it made my chest ache. I had a choice. I could end it quietly with screenshots and an exhausted argument, or I could let him watch his double life collide in real time. It says something about how much he'd underestimated me that he didn't see which one I'd pick. I drove to the restaurant with my phone on the passenger seat, the PI's last photo open on the screen. A live shot of them leaning toward each other, mid-laughter. The restaurant was even more romantic in person than in the photos. Low lighting, candles, soft music, clinking glasses, the quiet hum of people who were there to celebrate anniversaries and promotions, and just us nights. Definitely not book club vibes. The host greeted me with a polished smile. "Do you have a reservation?" "I'm meeting someone," I said, scanning the room. I saw them instantly. Back corner, half hidden by a large plant and a column. His profile angled toward her, his expression relaxed, soft in that way I hadn't seen in months when he was with me. Her hand rested on his forearm, bracelets glinting in the candlelight. For a second, I just watched. They looked practiced, like their bodies already knew where to lean, whose hand to reach for. A wave of nausea rolled through me. Then I straightened my shoulders and walked. The host said something behind me, but I didn't stop. The closer I got, the more details snapped into focus. The wine bottle on the table, their plates half finished. The way he was smiling at her like she was his story, not a chapter. She was saying something when she noticed me first. Her words faltered. Her hand dropped from his arm. He followed her gaze. His face went through a series of changes so fast it would have been funny if it weren't my life. Surprise, fear, then that stiff attempt at casual. "Hey," he said, forcing a smile. "What are you doing here, babe?" "Thought I'd check out this book club," I said lightly. "Interesting setup. Just the two of you?" The woman looked between us, confusion sharpening into something else. I could see it in her eyes, the dawning realization that she might not be the only one in his little orbit. "We were just having dinner," he said quickly, standing up so fast he almost knocked over his glass. "It's not—" "I can see that," I cut in. "Every Tuesday, for 8 months. Her eyebrows shot up. 8 months? He shot me a warning look. "Madison, we should talk outside." "How are the books, by the way?" I asked, keeping my tone conversational. "You never actually finish the ones you bring home." The woman's face drained of color. Who is she? She asked him. I turned to her. I'm his girlfriend, I said. 3 years. I stay at his place most nights. We're planning a trip next month. Who are you? She blinked. I'm Hannah, she said slowly. His ex. Then she turned to him, her voice a fraction too loud for the quiet restaurant. You told me you'd been single for over a year. The surrounding tables went quiet. There's a particular silence that comes when strangers realize they're about to witness something messy and real. You can feel it thicken in the air. Oh, this is perfect, I heard myself say, laughter cold in my own ears. You've been lying to both of us. He dragged a hand through his hair, eyes darting from me to her, calculating. I can explain, he started. Actually, I said, holding up a hand. Don't. I'm good. I turned like I was leaving. He reached out and grabbed my arm. Wait, please don't go. Let me talk to you. This isn't what you think. What I think, I said, keeping my voice even, is that you've been lying to me for 8 months while you've been having weekly romantic dinners with your ex, holding hands, kissing in the parking lot. Should I keep going, or do you want to hear the part about the receipts? His face went white. You had me followed? He hissed. That's insane. You announced you had a secret life, I said. I found out what it was. That's not insane. That's math. Hannah stepped around the table now, standing on the other side of him like a closing bracket. You told me she was some controlling ex who couldn't move on, she said, her voice shaking. You said you were done with her. My boyfriend opened his mouth, but for once, no words came out. The host hovered at a distance, torn between intervening and letting the show continue. One of the servers pretended to polish cutlery while watching us shamelessly. Can we please talk outside? My boyfriend said, through clenched teeth. You're making a scene. Funny, I said. You didn't think it was a scene when you were making out in a parking lot. I could feel my hands shaking, but my voice stayed calm, detached, like I was narrating a story I'd already survived. Finally, I turned and walked toward the exit. He followed me, catching up by the host stand. Madison, stop, he begged. Please, you're blowing this out of proportion. It was just dinner. Every week, with physical contact, while lying to both of us, I said. That's not just dinner, that's dating. We pushed through the doors into the cool night air. The parking lot felt too bright after the dim restaurant. He reached for me again, voice dropping to that soft tone he used when he wanted something. Baby, please, he said. I love you. Only you. I was just confused when she came back. I didn't know how to handle it, but I choose you. You don't get to choose now, I said. You already made your choice every single Tuesday. For a second, I saw it. The flash of anger under the pleading, the resentment at being cornered. I knew you'd overreact like this, he snapped. You're so jealous. You always are. You can't handle me having female friends. Friends don't have secret weekly dinners, I said. Friends don't kiss. Friends don't lie about being single. He scoffed. We never had sex, okay? We never had sex. Congratulations, I said flatly. You met the bare minimum standard of human decency. Do you want a medal, or are the $300 dinners enough? He flinched. You're really going to throw away 3 years over this? He demanded. You threw them away when you opened that door to your secret life, I said. Your words, not mine. His phone buzzed in his pocket. I wondered if it was Hannah, or one of his friends, or his next story. It didn't mean anything, he said desperately. She's just familiar. It was nostalgia, that's all. It meant something every time you let her believe she was your only, I said. It meant something every time you let me pay for real life while she paid for your fairy tale. He stared at me, breathing hard. I'm done, I said finally. Don't come to my place, don't call me, don't show up at my job, we're over. I got in my car. He banged on the window once, a dull thud that echoed in my chest, but I didn't look at him. I put the car in reverse, backed out of the parking space, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing there in the pool of yellow light from the street lamp, small and furious, and suddenly very, very alone. My phone lit up halfway home, his name flashing on the screen over and over. I let it ring. I had the photos. I had the report. For the first time in months, I also had something else. Leverage. I had no idea how ugly he was going to make it yet, but I was about to find out. I wish the fallout had been clean. A breakup, a few awkward texts, maybe a week of sadness, but men like my ex don't leave quietly. They unravel loudly. He started with the predictable route, blowing up my phone. Calls, texts, voicemails shifting from frantic apologies to rage-filled accusations, all in the span of one evening. I didn't reply. I stayed silent. I slept for the first time in days, even though sleep came in thin, fragile layers. The next morning, I woke up to messages not from him, but from his friends. Not the two who were in the kitchen that night. Those two were smart enough to stay out of the crater. These were different ones. People who hadn't seen the photos, who didn't know anything, who were only hearing his version. Madison, what you did was literally abusive. You hired someone to stalk him? Are you serious? You embarrassed him publicly. That's trauma. You owe him an apology. The mental gymnastics were almost admirable. I replied to exactly one of them. I picked the message from a girl named Julia, one of his loudest defenders. She'd written, "You're a psycho. Leave him alone." So I sent her a single photo, the one of him kissing Hannah by her car, time-stamped, high resolution, undeniable. She didn't respond. Not then. Not ever. Around noon, his name appeared on my phone again, but this time it wasn't a text. It was a knock on my apartment door. He'd driven across the city and was standing in the hallway, pacing, running a hand through his hair the way he did when he didn't know how to fix something. I didn't open the door. "Madison, please," he said through the wood. "Just talk to me." "No," I said. "We're done. I need to get my stuff." "Already packed," I said. "It'll be in the hallway in 10 minutes. Can we please talk face to face?" "No." "You're seriously doing this?" He let out a bitter laugh. "After 3 years, you won't even open the door?" "You lied for 8 months," I said. "I don't owe you a face-to-face." He went quiet. Then I heard the crack in his voice. "Madison, please, I love you." Something twisted inside me. Not pain exactly, maybe grief, or the echo of a person who used to believe him. "You love the life I made easy for you," I said. "Not me." He switched tactics instantly, like a man flipping pages in a playbook titled Manipulation 101. His voice hardened. "You're being dramatic. It was one dinner." 8 months, I corrected. "We weren't dating. It wasn't like that." "Kissing is dating," I said. "Holding hands is dating. Lying to both of us is dating." "You're insane," he snapped. "You're blowing everything up over nothing." I didn't respond. Silence was my new form of self-defense. I brought his things to the door in 3 bags. Clothes, toiletries, chargers, the pristine book he'd used as a prop. I set them on the floor and said, "They're outside." I walked away. Through the peephole, I watched him pick up each bag, breathing hard, his jaw tight, eyes red, not from sadness, but from being exposed. Before he left, he whispered something to the door. "You'll regret this." I didn't answer. He finally walked away, dragging the bags behind him. I thought that was the end. But the real story was just beginning. The harassment started 3 days later. I was at work, finishing a report, when my boss, Thomas, knocked on my office door. He looked uncomfortable. "Madison, do you have a minute?" My stomach dropped. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I suddenly knew exactly where this was going. He closed the door behind him. "We received an anonymous complaint about you." "Of course." "Let me guess," I said. "Someone claimed I'm stalking my ex." Thomas blinked. "Yes, they said you've been displaying obsessive behavior and may be emotionally unstable in ways that affect your judgment." I let out a humorless laugh. "Do you want the truth?" I asked. "I'd appreciate it." So I told him. I told him about the joke in the kitchen. The PI, the Tuesdays, the photos, the confrontation, the breakup. I didn't embellish, didn't dramatize, just facts like the PI had done. Thomas listened, his eyes softening in the way people's eyes do when they finally see the whole picture. "You hired a PI because he said he had a secret life?" he asked. "Yes. I would have done the same." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling. "Don't worry about the complaint. Just document everything. And if anything else happens, tell me immediately." "I will." He stood to leave, but he hesitated at the door. "Madison, I'm really sorry you're going through this." I nodded. I didn't cry until after he left. The building manager called me next. "Hi, Miss Cole. We've received 3 anonymous noise complaints about your unit, alleged shouting and disturbances." "I live alone," I said flatly. "I don't even talk to myself." He sighed. "I figured. The timing seemed suspicious. Security also noted someone matching a description you gave earlier, wandering near your door yesterday." I closed my eyes. Of course he'd shown up, probably circling like a shark around a boat it no longer had access to. "I can provide documentation if needed," I said. "Texts, photos, everything." "Thank you," the manager said. "We'll flag his name in our system. If he comes back, security will escort him out." "Good. Let him try." The next call was the one that almost made me laugh. His mother. "Hi, sweetie," she began, in the saccharine tone women like her reserve for guilt-tripping. "I heard you and my son are going through a rough patch." "We broke up," I said simply. She sighed dramatically. "Well, I heard a different version." "I bet she did." He told me you became paranoid and controlling, that you hired someone to follow him, that you embarrassed him in public. He announced he had a secret life, I replied. I found out what it was. He'd been seeing his ex behind my back for 8 months. Silence. She clearly hadn't been expecting logic. Well, she tried again. Everyone makes mistakes. He's devastated, absolutely heartbroken. Did he tell you he told her he was single? I asked. Or that he let her pay for $300 dinners every week while I was covering our groceries? Another silence. A longer one. Finally, she said, in a smaller voice, I have to support my son. And I have to support myself, I said. Goodbye. She didn't call again. But the entitlement crescendoed with the most ridiculous thing yet. A legal letter, delivered to my door in a cheap envelope, from a lawyer I'd never heard of. It demanded that I delete all PI photos, stop spreading false narratives, and pay him $1,500 for emotional distress. The letter was so poorly written, it looked like it had been drafted by ChatGPT's evil, incompetent twin. I sent it to my cousin, an actual lawyer. She laughed so hard she choked on her coffee. This isn't worth the postage, she said. I'll handle it. She wrote a response that was cold enough to frost glass. She attached screenshots where he admitted to being with Hannah, a statement from the PI, the photo Hannah herself had posted of them at the restaurant, a legal warning that any further harassment would result in us pursuing a restraining order. We sent it. He went silent. For the first time in weeks, silence. But silence from a man like him isn't closure. It's the inhale before the next explosion. And I was about to learn just how far he was willing to go. 2 months passed. 2 long, quiet, deceptively peaceful months. On the surface, everything looked normal. Work, coffee runs, Netflix at night, the gentle routine of a life I was slowly reclaiming. But trauma has a way of settling into your bones like cold weather. It doesn't scream, it lingers. Some mornings I'd wake up and instinctively check my phone, bracing for another anonymous message. Sometimes I'd pause before opening my apartment door, listening for footsteps on the other side. Healing wasn't linear, it wasn't pretty, but it was happening. Slowly I was learning to breathe again. Then the truth started surfacing, piece by piece, like debris washing onto the shore after a storm. The first surprise was Hannah. She emailed me. Subject line, I think you deserve this. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Inside were screenshots, photos, receipts, not of dates, of conversations, ones she'd had with him. There he was telling her, you were always the one. Madison was a mistake. I'm only with her because I feel bad. I'm done with her. We're not together. He had told me she was the one confused. Meanwhile, he was telling her he was single and ready for a future. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was exhausted. Hannah's message ended with, I broke things off for good. I didn't know he was lying to both of us. I'm sorry you were dragged into this. He manipulates everyone. I hope you're doing better than I am. I stared at the words for a long time. She wasn't my enemy. She never had been. She was another girl who believed him because he made it easy to believe him. I replied simply, thank you. Take care of yourself. Nothing more needed to be said. A week later, one of his friends messaged me. Not one of the loud ones. One of the quiet ones. The kind who watches and doesn't speak unless something is truly wrong. Hey, I think you should see this. It was screenshots from a group chat. Their group chat. My ex had spent weeks trying to rewrite the story, piece by piece, weaving lies like a spider spinning a web. Madison was controlling. She was jealous of every woman I talked to. She had trust issues. We weren't even together at the end. She stalked me. She harassed me. She ruined my mental health. But the best part? He tried to get his friends to coordinate the story. Please back me up if she contacts you. Just say she was unstable. She threatened me. She was obsessed with me. Even typed a whole paragraph they were supposed to copy-paste if anyone asked. Then, finally, mercifully, someone in the group chat snapped. It was Julia, the one who had called me psycho. She wrote, Bro, we saw the photos. We saw the PI report. Stop lying. You cheated. You manipulated 2 women. We're not covering for you. Another friend added, You need help, man. This is messed up. A third wrote, If you keep lying about her, I'm out. He left the chat after that. My ex, the golden boy of their friend group, got kicked out of his own narrative. Reality has a way of catching up, even when someone runs. Then came the final twist. Hannah reached out again. Not to me, to his friend who'd messaged me. Apparently, she and my ex had tried getting back together shortly after the restaurant incident. He'd cried, begged, said he'd changed. She believed him, for a minute. And then she found out he was still trying to contact me. Every few days, he tried a new number, a new email, a new strategy. When she confronted him, he broke down again and said, "She's my weak spot." That was the last line Hannah ever shared with anyone about him. She ended it. He spiraled. He lost her, lost me, lost his friends, lost the version of himself he tried to curate in mirrors and conversations and carefully filtered stories. He didn't lose us because we were cruel. He lost us because he couldn't stop lying long enough to keep anyone. Meanwhile, my life regained color. It didn't happen all at once, but slowly. Work stopped feeling like a distraction and started feeling like purpose again. Coffee tasted like coffee again, not routine. I went back to my Saturday morning farmer's market. I bought a new duvet. I stopped double-checking every shadow. I even started dating again, slowly, cautiously, carefully. I told one date, a kind-eyed software engineer, the short version of my breakup when he asked. He listened, leaned back, and said, "That's horrible, but honestly, you handled it better than most people would." I shrugged. I just didn't want to lose myself in the process. He smiled softly. "That's impressive." Maybe it was. Not because I didn't break, but because I broke quietly and then rebuilt carefully. People sometimes ask if I regret hiring the PI, as if getting proof was the betrayal, not the 8 months of lies. But here's the truth. He announced he had a secret life. I simply uncovered it. And knowing the truth, however painful, is always better than living inside someone else's lie. If I hadn't found out then, I might have moved in with him, might have married him, might have built years on a foundation made of rot. He lost both women he tried to juggle and the friends he tried to manipulate. I lost 3 years, but I gained my clarity, my peace, my future back. And honestly, I'm completely fine with that.